In a world where anything is possible, in a world where the normal and the paranormal reside, Almost Unbelievable brings to you the stories you want to hear, but fear to hear. Join us in the pit.
You have joined the Almost Unbelievable podcast with Cats and Ranty. I'm Cats. Are you there, Ranty?
I am Cats, and thank you for bringing me along on this very interesting show. I do believe we have a guest that some of the audience may be familiar with.
Yeah, our guest today is a little bit of a YouTube celebrity, but we'll talk about his channel in a minute. For now, you know how much I love to bore you with my stories and trivia, so are you ready?
I've always got time for a story from you, Cat.
So if I was to ask you about Anita, what or who do you think Anita is?
Why is that name so familiar? I have no idea. I did a painting job for an Anita a couple of years ago. Maybe. Is that the one you're talking about?
No, it would be a hell of a coincidence if I was, wouldn't it? No, Anita is an acronym. It stands for the Antarctic Impulsive Transient Antenna. Now, dear old Anita has been in the news recently with sensational headlines like, has NASA actually found a parallel universe where time runs backwards? And I'm not going to go deeply into the science behind this at the minute because I really want to do a full podcast on Anita and what it was supposed to have found. But it is curious that we do seem to be getting quite a lot of stories lately from people who feel as if they've been pulled from one universe or one sort of dimension into another. And this is where maybe science meets science fiction or science meets the supernatural. So, Ranty, would it be possible in the future to do a whole podcast just on Anita and how it may have provided evidence for an alternate parallel universe?
Oh, right, okay. Well, yeah, by all means, bring me in on this one. It sounds very intriguing.
Awesome. Well, for now, today's guest has got a story of his own. And as you might have guessed from the introduction, it has got to do with perhaps slipping into some sort of parallel world. But I'm really excited about today's guest. He is an ultra scientifically minded skeptic who runs the very successful YouTube channel, FTFE. Please look him out and you'll see him debunking all sorts of claims on that channel. But he's here now with a claim of his own. And Ranty, I will let you introduce him.
Thanks, Cats. And yes, we are joined by FTFE. How in the world are you doing?
Hi, thank you for having me on. I'm really happy to be here. Can I just say that I think you and Ranty might be one of the best duos on the internet, so please don't stop doing what you're doing.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you very much.
When I was younger, I was 14 and I had a few paper rounds. One of them was at 5 o'clock in the morning. And it was just coming, it was probably midsummer, just before school was go for summer, and they just released Mortal Kombat 3. And I stayed up pretty much all night playing Mortal Kombat 3. Fight me as Sub-Zero, you'll lose, trust me. Had about maybe half an hour's kit, my alarm goes off, I've got to get up, do my paper round, tired as you like. Walk down to the shop, pick up my papers, doing my normal rounds. And I've been doing this round for about 2 years at this time. You know, it was almost an autopilot thing for me, right? And as I was about 3/4 through the round, I started noticing that the lights, the lampposts that I was going past, the lights would turn off as I got past them. Now, that wasn't necessarily an unusual thing. It was early in the morning. That was the time that the lights usually went off. And it happened every now and then. I didn't really think anything of it. But as I was about to go around this corner, I went past a light and it went off. And I felt pressure over my body. And like static electricity on every part of my body. And it made me feel really nauseous and slightly dizzy. And then when I looked up, I wasn't in the same place anymore. It was still the street that I was on, but everything looked almost like a pastel drawing. Nothing was quite right. It was, there wasn't really any buildings there, but there were shapes that maybe could be buildings. And I kind of blinked my eyes a few times, rubbed my eyes, thought maybe I just felt a bit weird, but no, it was still there. And then there was what appeared to be people or some kind of life forms, and they seemed agitated that I was there and were moving towards me. And I freaked out and I turned around and I ran. And then after about 5 seconds, I had that feeling again, that pressure over my entire body, that feeling of static touching every single part of my body. And I felt dizzy and weird. And when I looked up again, I was back at the same, in the normal street, doing with the buildings around me like normal. Turned around, none of that weirdness that I'd seen was there. And I just carried on doing my paper round. Felt very queasy and nauseated for the whole day, had a headache. I got home and I spoke to my mum, and I was saying to my mum that something weird has happened. And my mum said to me that, well, you're probably just tired. You probably were just sleepwalking or something. And that almost makes sense to me. But it was such a vivid experience, especially the seeing these life forms, these people. It was all kind of washed out and weird, but there was definitely people there, or some kind of life forms, and they seemed very, very irritated that I was near them, that I was there. And they were coming towards me like they were, angry at me. And the only thing that you can do in that situation, I think, is turn around and run. And that's what I did. And everything came back to normal again. And I don't know what happened. I'm a man of science. I think there is multiple universes. And for a second, I might have slipped into an alternate reality, because it was definitely a real place. It was definitely, I was there. I could see into the distance. It had shape. It had 3Dness to the world, and it didn't seem like a dream. It felt very, very real. Even after trying to rub my eyes and give myself a shake to see if I was hallucinating, it was still there. It was all very, very real. And I can remember the feeling of the pressure of my body and the electric, the static touching my hands and touching my cheeks, and that it's a feeling that I've never had in a dream or anything before. And it's such a vivid thing that I can still feel it now when I think about it, what that feeling was. So, yeah, I was very freaked out by the whole thing. I spent the whole day feeling very, very uneasy. I still carried on doing my paper round, and it never happened again. Lights going off, that's just something that happens at that time in the morning. But for just those few minutes, those maybe 30 seconds or something, I think I went somewhere else. And, I could never say for sure what definitely happened, but it's an experience that's so vivid in my mind that I think there has to be some kind of alternate explanation for it other than I was just sleepwalking.
Wow. Well, one of the things I like most about this story is that I know you, and I know how scientific you are. I know how skeptical you are. You built a YouTube channel with over 40,000 subscribers based on being scientific and skeptical, and yet here you are with a story that you are struggling to find a scientific explanation for, and I think that's fascinating. But before we start to delve into the good stuff, we do have something on this podcast we like to call the housekeeping questions, where we ask the questions that we know the listeners are going to be burning to ask, the obvious questions that they want getting out the way. So for that, Ranty, I'm going to pass over to you. Have you got any housekeeping questions?
Yeah, I think the first one's going to be, had you taken any drugs recently?
No. I was 14, and I was a very good, very, prim and proper, top of the class type boy. I didn't do anything like that at that age. Didn't smoke cigarettes or anything. So no, I think the only drug was the fact that I was low on sleep at that time. But
And speaking of sleep, have you ever experienced sleepwalking before or after?
yeah, I have sleptwalked a few times in my life. I remember going to camp with school, and I tried to sleepwalk out of the tent and out of the place that we were, and the teacher had to come and get me. And I also sleptwalked on the bus when we were coming back from France with the school, and then told my teacher that I needed to have a bath or something. So yeah, there has been instances in my life where I have sleptwalked. My mum caught me peeing in the cupboard once when I was younger. I remember that. So yeah.
I like to use sleepwalk as an excuse, and I'm peeing around the house as well.
Well, when you sleepwalk, is it a memory that you have of your sleepwalking, or is it when somebody else says to you, hey, you were sleepwalking and this is what you did?
Well, every time that I've sleptwalked, I've got no memory of it.
There you go.
Every time someone said to me, you've been sleepwalking, I don't remember anything that's happened.
I'm the same. I've sleptwalked in the past, and maybe one or two instances when I've woken up the next morning, I've maybe confused flashes of it with a dream, but most of the time, absolutely no recollection. But you seem to be very clear that you had these very distinct physical sensations there.
That's the thing that sells it for me in my mind, is that the physical sensations that I remember, that feeling of like squeezing over every point of my body, and the feeling of static that you can feel it if you rub the balloon on your head. You can almost feel that. But I had that on every point of my body.